Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is What I've Been Thinking with Marcus Cage, and I'm your host, Marcus Cage. In this show, I would like to cover the comments that Speaker Pelosi has recently made as to the calls for impeachment of President George Bush at the time when she took the speakership the first time, and her comments as far as impeachment overall.
Overwhelming call for me to impeach President Bush on the strength of the war in Iraq, which I vehemently opposed. And again, I say again, I said at other places, that was my wheelhouse. I was intelligence. I was the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, even before I became part of the leadership of Gang of Four. So I knew there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. It just wasn't there. They had to show us. They had to show the Gang of Four all the intelligence they had. The intelligence did not show that that was the case. So I knew it was a misrepresentation to the public. But having said that, it was in my view, not a ground for impeachment. They had impeached Bill Clinton for personal indiscretion and misrepresenting about it. Impeached him. Some of these same people are saying, oh, this doesn't rise to impeachment. We're right there impeaching Bill Clinton for being stupid in terms of something like that. I mean, I love him. I think he was a great president. But being stupid in terms of that, and what would somebody do not to embarrass their family? But in any event, and that's so they did Bill Clinton. Now they want me to do George. I just didn't want it to be a way of life in our country.
I know by now most of you guys have all seen this video also, but I wanted to speak about it specifically being a veteran. This video really infuriated me, and I wanted to wait a while before I weighed in on it because I didn't want for my anger to come across too much in this video and to get too much out of whack and to not stay concise on the issues and the problems which I have with her whole statement. The very first thing which she said in her statement, which bothered me, was the fact that she knew that President Bush was lying. If you knew that President Bush was lying, why didn't you go to the media and make more of a push to the media that he was being untruthful? That's my first thing before we even get to the point of impeaching him later on. If you knew from the beginning, why didn't you make more of an effort to try to prevent us from going into this war? She did not. I don't know her reasons, and I won't try to be a therapist and jump inside of her head and understand her reasons for not pushing harder, not pushing back against this more. The next thing is, at the time, she knew that he was lying, was years before the time she became the speaker. And so it's easy if somebody was to, the year after or the very 2 or 3 years after the us going into Iraq. But by 2006, 2007, that time frame when she's going into office, that had been many years had passed. We had been able to see that it was that we were completely lied into it, that there was a lot of manipulation going on, and she knew this. At this point, the public, we all knew this. So to go with, well, we didn't know in the beginning. Well, this isn't the beginning anymore. This is years down the road, and we all know. And she made the effort because of worrying about setting a tone of impeaching president after president. Well, my thoughts on Bill Clinton and that whole impeachment uh, inquiry and whole impeachment whole scenario. Yes, it was complete partisan politics and hypocrisy for uh, Newt Gingrich, the speaker at the time, to go after Bill Clinton. Because, as many of us know, or some may not know, Newt Gingrich himself was cheating on his own wife, basically doing the same thing Bill Clinton's doing and going after him. And if you remember the Republicans during that time period, it was investigation after investigation after investigation of President Clinton looking for anything that they could nail him on. Not saying there weren't legitimate reasons to go after him, but most of it was looking and hoping to get something against him, not actually having concrete reasoning that they were going after. So by the time it came around to the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, it was perjury that actually got him, and perjury is a crime. Would most people lie in that scenario? Yes, they would, especially to try to protect their family or protect a relationship. That's understandable, I feel. But nonetheless, it is still perjury. It is still a crime. So therefore, Republicans had every right to go after him and impeach him. Now, if you feel that that's not a big enough reason to pull him from office, then that's perfectly fine. But you can't look at the impeachment as, well, it's completely unfair. Well, if he decided to not comment or decided to not lie about it, then the impeachment goes nowhere because the perjury never happens. So therefore, the president walked himself into that scenario himself. So Nancy Pelosi can't look at it as in, well, they're just going after him for being stupid. Well, a lot of people's stupidity ends them in prison or losing jobs and careers and all kinds of things all the time. It shouldn't be an exception just because you're the president. And if you're going to go after other presidents, you have to not be afraid to call out your own side when you're not doing everything correctly. So she feels like it was a partisan, basically witch hunt going after Clinton. And it sets a bad tone to go after the next president. Well, I argue the opposite. I think if a person is doing something wrong, then they should be called out on it. I feel the Democrats had every right to go after Reagan for a lot of the things which his administration did. A lot of those things were confirmed, documented, and countless amounts of evidence, which you can still look up today. So they had grounds to impeach. The Republicans obviously had grounds to impeach Clinton. The Democrats obviously had grounds to impeach George Bush also. If you think about, we had over 4,000 servicemen and women who died in the line of duty. For what? I mean, if you look at the recent reports now, it showed that President Bush and President Obama lied in Afghanistan, or were lying in, I believe it's Afghanistan and Iraq, both of them. Regardless, both of those presidents are lying. So it makes sense that, oh, well, I know that this president before has lied and that president before lied. What's happened is the people in Washington, D.C. have learned to accept this precedent of, well, presidents will do a certain amount of stuff that's coloring outside of the lines, but it's okay because it's our party. It's not okay. It doesn't matter which party. And if any president should have been impeached, it should have been George Bush. I mean, there are reports which say up to a million Iraqis died because of this. We spent over $1 trillion over a lie. And that wasn't enough to even make Nancy Pelosi even think about impeachment. But for President Trump, who's going after political opponents, to Nancy Pelosi, for some reason, that's far more important than all the people who died. For all the countries now, which are completely out of whack because of all the things which happened from the Iraq War, ISIS, which popped up, Al Qaeda, which spread around the country, the amount of refugees which have imploded into Europe, which caused so many problems, which lead to certain things we're dealing with today, like Brexit. There are so many issues that were caused from that one thing. And Nancy Pelosi feels, well, we don't want to do that because, the last president before was impeached, so we should just let this one go. I actually know people who were killed in action. I have family members currently right now, younger cousins, a stepson from a former marriage which I had, who's active duty Marine Corps right now, which I keep in touch with from time to time. I have numerous friends and family who are active duty military, reservists, retired, who are all directly affected by the decisions which are made by people like Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Obama, all of these people. And when we have struggles and pains, we're ignored. But Nancy Pelosi feels the need that this impeachment of Trump, what Trump did, is so much worse than trillions of dollars in treasury lost for no reason, and hundreds of thousands of lives lost, majority of them being civilian casualty, women and children. But that's not grounds for impeachment. For those of you who are supporters of Nancy Pelosi or supporters of people who support this position, I just ask for you to just really think about it from a different lens. Think about it if instead you weren't an American. Think about it if you were an Iraqi. If you were just trying to go to work someday and, make a little bit of money, bring home some food for your family, just trying to have a good time, just trying to have a simple life, not involved in the politics that are going on, not involved in the war or the different tribes, not involved in the Americans who are coming in or any of the other militaries which are coming into this country. And then you come home to sit down and relax, and your house is bombed. That happens. That happened to hundreds of thousands of people. And that doesn't get any rise out of the speaker or those who support her. For those of you who feel that I am coming after her in an unfair way, that it has something to do with sexism, it has nothing to do with any of those things. It has to do with the fact of I've been around the world. I've had these conversations with people face to face. I've seen some of these things face to face. And when you see these things and you realize that the very people who can stop these things or have control over them or can raise the red flags and stop some of this waste of treasure, waste of life, misery, suffering, and profiteering from American corporations mostly, or I'll say Western corporations in general. This goes on, and nobody has a problem with it. We could say that, okay, well, that was a decision that she made at that time period. And you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be so harsh on her because there was a whole lot of things to weigh in and weigh there. Well, at this current time, while she's impeaching President Trump, she's also basically allowing him to have the same leadway that President Bush did to lie us into another major conflict and war. Will he do it? I have no doubt in my mind that if the situation lines up the right way and he gets ticked off or mad at this person or mad at that person, we will be in a war. And from the actions and the track record of our current speaker, we know that there's not going to be any pushback. Very saddening and very frustrating. Guess that's all I have to say on that. I hope you guys all take care of your family and your loved ones. And if you have anybody in the military that you know or that you communicate with, hope you say, a prayer for them and look out for them because our leadership definitely is not. Thank you.